Hi, it's the Randy Karraker Show. That's Brooke. I'm Randy, and it's great to have you with us on Sports Hub STL. Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Did you watch the entire Cardinal game yesterday?
I did not. I'm sorry. That should be probably a requirement for what we do here.
well.
But at the same time, when that happens yesterday, it's kind of hard to watch, Randy. I had cleaning to do. That's pretty bad when you can't even wash my hair, clean. That's pretty bad when even like you're like, I would rather clean than watch this right now.
It was it was distressing if you're like I am, if you're a big Eric Fetty fan.
Are you a big Eric Fetty
Oh
fan?
yeah, he's
I didn't
guy.
know this about you.
Yeah. So
when did this happen?
Oh well, you're aware that I think that we could have one of the best power couples in the history of sports.
Well, yes, I think that you should readdress that though.
Well, yeah, if Fetty, and I don't know if he's married or not, but if he would date Shanae Ogwabwike of ESPN, and they would get together, kind of like you had J-Lo or what was Jennifer Benifer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well,
what was it? What was hers with A-Rod? J-Rod?
J-Rod, yeah. But you could have, if you had Eric Fetty and Shanae, you could have Fede Chine.
Oh, wow.
So thank you.
Yes. You don't like that? You don't like love?
Ref,
of course he doesn't like love.
Oh, no, he doesn't.
No, he really doesn't.
Yeah, that's Matthew Rocchio. He's here today too. And we're going to talk to our buddy Xavier Scruggs coming up at about 20 after. He is high on the Cardinals. Well, he's high on a couple of their potential stars. So Xavier will join us 20 after. We're looking forward to that. Fetty yesterday does go 4 innings. He allows 6 earned runs on 7 hits. He struck out 0 and walked 1, and he did allow 3 home runs. Helsley came in and allowed a run as well. And then Roderick Munoz has been okay so far this spring. He allowed a couple of runs in his 1 inning of work. Graceffo also did. I've got Graceffo on my opening day roster. And then Nick Anderson had his first clean inning of the spring. Anderson now with the 12.46 earned run average. And our buddy John Denton over at MLB.com, good buddy of ours, has put together his roster for opening day. And one of the things, and I need to know what you think of this. I would be surprised a little bit if Barrero, who has had a really nice spring for the Cardinals, would make the team ahead of Fermin. And I know Barrero has a 286 average and a 994 OPS, but he's 26. He's had a lot of time in the minors, and he really has not had a consistently good run yet, even in the minor leagues.
No, I was kind of surprised to see Barrera. I know he had a great day yesterday, but I was kind of surprised that he would be an option off the bench for the Cardinals. For my bench, I have Fermin, Herrera, Burleson, and Baker as my guys. Of course, with Herrera and Pages, as we know, it will depend on maybe the matchups too and what they feel like using, even the pitcher on the mound. But just in this instance, I have Fermin being that guy, Burleson, Baker, and Herrera, or Pages, whichever one isn't in the game. That's what I have for my bench. I was kind of surprised that he put Barrero. I was like, is it just because of yesterday? Like, that's it?
And he also, if you go to Cardinals.com, I guess that there was an editing glitch because John Denton also has Matt Koperniak on his bench. You can only have a 4-man bench, and he's got a 5-man bench on his.
Why can't the Cardinals just do what they want in that situation?
I think they should. They are the Cardinals after all.
Yeah.
So let's
change the rules.
Give them the opportunity. Yeah, give them. Well, it is a 26-man roster, isn't it? So we've got 26. So you get 13 and 13. So we've got the starting 9, including a DH. 11, 12, 13, 10, 11, 12. No, you get a 4-man bench. I was right the first time. My math is sound.
It is. It always is sound, right? You always question yourself with math, but honestly, you've been pretty spot on here lately.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm on a roll.
Yes. Scott asked, do you think that with the Cole news, so talking about Garrett Cole with his latest injury, which is obviously a huge one, needing Tommy John surgery, do you think with the cold news, the Yankees will be looking at Fetty? So we were discussing this yesterday, and then we saw Fetty yesterday.
Yeah.
How much does that change things? Do teams, when they're looking at trade possibilities still during spring training, do they pay attention to those games during spring training and say, ooh, that wasn't a great one. That doesn't really help with what we want?
I think that I would be inclined, if I were the Yankees, to look at that. Now, they have, right now, as their starting rotation, Max Fried, who came over as a free agent. They have Carlos Rodon, who was a free agent a few years ago. They have Marcus Stroman, who was a free agent last year. And then Clark Schmidt, who pitched really well, kind of had a breakout year last year. And they've got a youngster by the name of Will Warren, who yesterday, their general manager, Brian Cashman, said would get the first shot. Cashman is really reluctant, I guess, at the behest of their owner, Hal Steinbrenner to go over the luxury tax any more than they already have. So I would think if the Cardinals were going to do a Fetty deal, and $7.5 million, well, it's a big deal to us, is a bargain price for a starting pitcher these days. But I would think, Brooke, even if the Cardinals would want to try to make a move like that, and I don't think the Yankees would pursue Fetty right now, but I think the Cardinals would have to pay half of his salary, if not a little bit more.
Well, could you package him with maybe a Steven Matz or something else to sweeten the pot a little bit?
See, that's another thing. And I talk about this because of Matz's stuff. But, and I like Steven Matz. He rides the same kind of bike as me. And he likes St. Louis. He's a good guy. But since Steven Matz got to the Cardinals, and this is a rather large sample size of 3 years, his innings pitched over the course of that time are in 2022, he gave the Cardinals 48 innings. In 2023, he gave the Cardinals 105 innings. And last year, he gave the Cardinals 44.1. So if you have an injured pitcher and you're trying to replace him with a guy that'll provide a level of reliability, I don't think Steven Matz does that.
No, I just like the versatility of maybe him in the bullpen. I don't know what his feelings are on towards that. I assume that he's fine. Of course, he wants to be a starter first, but maybe the right situation, he would be willing to be a bullpen piece for a team.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that he would mind that at all. I think that's one of the reasons that the Yankees might take a look, because their bullpen, even though they acquired some pieces during the offseason, the Yankees bullpen isn't that great either. I think that's where Matz, if he has a future left in Major League Baseball, I think that's where it is.
Don't you think, too, with his injury history, that would be more beneficial for him to be in the bullpen?
You would think it would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So point being, I don't think that right now the Yankees, and they still haven't named a third baseman. DJ LeMahieu is hurt. Giancarlo Stanton, their DH, their best potential DH, he's hurt. So it seems like Arenado would be a good fit for them too. But amazingly, the Yankees are worried about the luxury tax.
All of a sudden they care about that?
Yeah. And maybe they feel like, okay, well, maybe the owners have decided, okay, we're going to have a salary cap. And the only team that's really not playing along is the two. Because you've got literally the Steve Cohen tax that he says, oh, yeah, I'll blow through that. That's the Mets owner. Yes. And then you've got the Dodgers, who are just playing by their own rules, rightfully so, because they make so much money, more money than everybody else.
Yeah, and they don't care about the luxury tax because of what they're getting back, especially in Japanese advertisement, that we talked about. I don't think that they're worried about it whatsoever. I mean, the amount of money that they're bringing in is insane. But the Yankees, it seems like a lot of things are falling apart on their side, and I'm just surprised they haven't made a move. And maybe it's just us with the Cardinals, and we're looking at them trying to do this reset, this transition, and I'm still trying to understand how it's fully a transition or reset without having some of those younger pitchers in your starting rotation. Because to your point with what John Denton was saying too, in his article where he's looking at the projections of the starters and position players, that when you're looking at the starting rotation, there's no room for a young guy, and I'm talking about younger, other than Andre Pallante. I want to see a McGreevy get a chance. I want to see a Liberatore get a chance. I want to see one of those younger guys. Why not? When all these teams are in these situations where injuries are popping up, just at least, try to approach the Yankees about a possibility of a trade.
I think it makes sense. I would try it. Now, Ghostface Gaming is on the YouTube chat. He says, McGreevy is better than Fetty, Michaelis, Pallante, or Matz. He needs to be in the rotation over any of those guys. Well, right now, Eric Fetty has an earned run average this spring of 6.30. Matz 3.00, Michaelis 4.15, Pallante 9.00, and Gray 9.45. Michael McGreevy's earned run average is 1.17, and he had a 1.86 last year, sub 2 earned run average in the major leagues. 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you, Ghostface. But here's the problem. We aren't the Cardinals, and I actually have McGreevy starting the season in the minors.
I don't want him to, but doesn't that seem what the case is? Because your starting rotation, as of right now, this is what I have. I have Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, and Andre Pallante in that order. I would rather Michael McGreevy be in that starting rotation with Palante. I think Palante has done a great job of proving himself, but I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. I understand that even Sonny Gray hasn't been exactly disappointed in his performances when he's talked about during spring training, because he said, and a lot of the pitchers say this, especially the veteran ones, that they're just working on certain things. But through 6 2/3 in spring training, Gray has pitched an unsightly 9.45 ERA and has given up a whopping 5 home runs on 10 hits. And in his second appearance, we have to look at that exit velo, especially for pitchers. He has allowed 8 batted balls that had exit velocities over 95. That's a concern for me. And I know he's working on things, but still, with this veteran starting rotation, do you think that the reason that they're keeping some of these guys around is so that it could maybe give these younger positional players more of a chance? Kind of the same thing about when people ask, and I was even confused too, about why they didn't move Ryan Helsley with his value being the highest this offseason. Why not try to move him? Is it because they're trying to keep some of these pitchers around, veteran pitchers, to give some of these guys more of a chance?
Okay, well, let me start with Helsley.
With winning games.
Helsley is a different story because he did have and does have value. And for whatever reason, the Cardinals said, yeah, we want to keep around because they want to give us this illusion of competing in 2025.
Yes.
But with the other guys, I don't think the Cardinals have an appetite, except for Nolan Arenado, to pay players to play for another team. And I believe that if Matz goes, even though it's $11 million for maybe $12 million for this year, if Fetty goes, even though it's only $7.5 million, I think they would have to pay a little bit of those salaries because those guys have not been great. And I don't think the Cardinals have the appetite to do that.
But they would be fine with Nolan Arenado. They would have to, I would assume, if they're moving Arenado, eat some of that salary if they were planning on moving him.
But there's a little bit of value with Arenado because of 2 things. Number one, you get him off the books for the last 3 years, not just this year. And the other 2 are just for this year. And that's a lot of money, $64 million over 3 years. So if you can get that off the books for 3 years, that's an advantage. The other part that adds value if you move Nolan Arenado is later on, we're going to show you our lineups and we're going to tell you who's going to wind up not being on the team because Nolan Arenado is.
Yeah, and that's the big part of it, is that you needed Nolan Arenado to move. And of course, he has the right to say which team that he picks and chooses. That is a situation that him and the Cardinals are in. But at the same time, like, you needed him to move for this kind of to work out for the position players, because now there's just the roster construction looks a little funky, doesn't it?
Yeah,
especially when we're kind of putting together the lineups this morning. I was putting together my bench and I'm like, this is a really tough situation on who you're leaving out in some of the games.
And in the games, and like, I think that being able to have everybody that deserves to be on the major league roster on the major league roster is prohibitive because of that. And I know that John Denton, for example, at MLB.com has Gorman on the bench and Burleson playing. I have Burleson on the bench and Gorman playing.
So he has Burleson as his DH?
Yes, he does. So either way, you're going to have a hitter that you want to be playing, not playing. Because Nolan Arenado is here and Gorman isn't there at third base.
Well, and I've asked you about this before, but we have maybe seen kind of roster flexibility as a benefit going to the season. But when I'm looking at this, we're looking at roster flexibility, right? Where you could mix and match depending on if it's a lefty or a righty on the mound based on who you're having in the game, who's your DH, all the different kind of stuff. But is that exactly a good thing if you're trying to build up some continuity and consistency with these young players?
No, the biggest thing the Cardinals want to do this year is find out if these guys can play. And with Arenado, one of the things that you have is the immense creativity of Ollie Marmol. He'll be able to mix and match and move guys around. But I don't think that I don't think that the Cardinals are best served by having one of those left-handed hitters on the bench every day.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so whatsoever. But that's the situation that they're in right now. I just don't know how exactly you mix and match these perfectly. And for your bench too, what is the best situation there? I mean, I do like Baker to come up, especially if there's a lefty on the mound as a pinch hitter. But Burleson, I have him on my bench. I don't have him as the DH, but of course that could be dependent on the matchup on the mound.
Yeah. We get another YouTube chat in here from our buddy Ghostface Gaming again. He says, Baker is a better hitter than Gorman. Burleson definitely should be playing over Gorman. And my guess would be, Ghostface, and we'll ask our friend Xavier Scruggs about this. if you put both players, Baker and Gorman, on the block and say, okay, you can get, if Mo says, I'm going to trade one of these guys, the teams that are interested in adding a hitter, each and every one of them is going to request Nolan Gorman.
Oh, they're going to, I mean, they would blow up their phone about that. Would they not?
Yeah, they would.
It's just that he has more of what the other teams are looking at. That potential power is something that every single team is going to buy in on, especially left-handed power.
And Luke Baker just turned 28 yesterday or 2 days ago too.
Yeah.
He's not 24 like Gorman is.
No, there's a huge age difference there, isn't there? Yeah, it's especially like, in the baseball. In baseball years, that's a huge age difference.
Yeah. Burley will hit 30 homers if he plays. And that's another reason that I want to see Burleson in there along with Gorman, because if Alec Burleson can continue to do what he did last year, and he admits that he got tired last year. It was the first time he'd played a bunch of games, and after the All-Star break, he wasn't the same player, but he is capable of hitting 30 home runs if you get him in there. And now he is in shape. He's prepared himself for a 6-month season. I don't think there's any question that if you get Burleson in there, he can be a really good hitter. And by the way, he's not just a slugger. He's not like Gorman. This is a guy that led AAA in hitting a few years ago. I think he hit 321 in the minors.
What do you think will be the identity of this team offensively this year? Because we have heard like little bits and pieces about Brant Brown telling these, and Brant Brown, by the way, is the new hitting coach for the Cardinals. If you didn't know, that we've heard bits and pieces of Brant Brown telling these young players like Jordan Walker, like, look, you don't have to worry about the exit velo. We don't care if you reach 20 home runs, all the different kind of stuff. What do you think the hitting philosophy is? Because if they're not going to be a team built on power, which clearly probably not, if we're talking about Alec Burleson being on your bench and he's the only player returning with 20 plus home runs from last season, how are they scoring? Are they going to score in different ways? Are we going to see these guys steal some more bases, get creative? Are we going to see maybe the return of a little bit of Whitey ball? What is going to be the identity of this team offensively?
I love the approach that Brant Brown espouses. He said, hey, when you need to slug, go up there as a slugger. When you need to hit, go up there as a hitter and try to get your bat on the ball. These are all, I don't think they're all necessarily just cookie cutter hitters. I think they're capable of being good hitters that slug. And I do think it's a mistake for hitters to go up trying to hit home runs. One of the things that Turner Ward wanted his players to do was go up and hit the ball hard. I think every hitting coach wants the guys to do that. But sometimes you have to throw the launch angle out the window, and you just have to tell a guy, hey, just go up and try to hit the ball hard. That's why I have intrigue in Nolan Gorman, because when he hits the ball, he hits it hard. Now, does he miss it 37% of the time? He did last year. Yeah. He struck out 37% of the time. But if he can get back to 30, 31%, he was a 31% strikeout guy.
They don't care what that strikeout rate is, as long as he gets to 30-something home runs.
Yeah, and that's what the Cardinals feel like. They, if he gets to 35, 40 home runs, they're going to be very excited about it. Bill Downton, with offense needed, yes, on Koperniak over Ciani. And the thing is there, if Koperniak is going to play, yes. But if your outfield is going to be on an everyday basis, Nootbaar, who you want to learn about, Victor Scott, who you're playing so that he can grow as a major leaguer, and Walker, then Koperniak is going to be a pinch hitter. And so how much is he going to help your offense when he's coming in to face the other team's best reliever in the 8th or 9th inning? And that's the only time he gets to hit.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of people say that they want to see Koperniak at the big league level. What would be the right, I guess, situation to happen where we could see that open up?
It's sad, because I think he would have the team made if he were a right-handed hitter, but he's not. So
it's just more of kind of the situation of this time.
Roster construction.
Yes. Yeah.
It makes it tough. Andy Groh says Gorman just needs everyday at-bats, and he's got to be better than he was last year. Not only does he need everyday at-bats, but he needs everyday quality at-bats, and that's what I want to see. And apparently he's kind of cut back on his swing, and he's willing to be more judicious in his approach under Brant Brown.
We heard from Ollie last season, and he did this with Mason Wynn, if you remember too, at the beginning of the season, where he kind of gave him rest days. And he did this with Gorman as well, because we heard about the back. Go ahead and make the joke.
How long has he been dealing with that?
There we go. All right. Now that we moved on from that, Gorman, he would let rest every once in a while too, because of these back issues that he was dealing with. If you're Ollie Marmol this season, unless it's health related, are you giving a Gorman any days off?
Oh, if he looks like he's dragging, you just have to pick your spots with him. And there might be a time where the Cardinals are facing a tough left-handed pitcher where you might give him a day off, especially if you have a right-handed hitter available, which is no guarantee that you'll have a right-handed hitter that, unless he's DHing and you want to get Baker in there or something like that, or Herrera, so that you can both Herrera and Pages in there. Yeah, I would give him some days off, but generally I want him to play 140, 145 games.
I do too, because he has been so limited, which I know that injuries and stuff like that has been part of the issue there. I don't want to see him as limited as we've seen in the past, unless there is something they're trying to keep him from health wise.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Not this past offseason, but the offseason before that, I was espousing the idea of trading Nolan Gorman for Dylan Cease. And the vast majority of the people that responded to us at that time were saying, no way, you don't trade Nolan Gorman. You don't trade a potential slugger. You don't, an everyday player that can slug like that. You don't trade a guy like that. And now they say, a lot of people are saying you can't hit.
I know a lot of people. We've had people in the chat, and thank you guys for sending in all of your questions and comments in the chat. Please continue to do that. But I've also seen a lot of people on the chat and on social media say, oh, we've already seen Nolan Gorman. We already know who he is. He's 24 years old. You can't give up on that, guys. You mentioned earlier, if for whatever reason the Cardinals just put him up right now and said, we want to move Nolan Gorman, so many teams would be knocking down their door. They would. I think that, do you think it's just the past fear of what happened with Dylan Carlson? And I'm talking about kind of recent issues where, I mean, the value for Dylan Carlson was really high, and then it just completely tanked over these recent years.
Yeah, Carlson, and I think they still have some Randy Arozarena fear that these young players will wind up being really good when they didn't evaluate them properly.
Yeah,
I think there's some of that there. And the other part is, the Cardinals have admitted and recognized that their development wasn't good at the minor league level. And these guys are going to have to be developed at the major league level, because what they were getting in terms of teaching, in terms of preparing them for the major leagues, it was not great or even maybe good at the minor league level. So I think the Cardinals recognize that too, that we did these guys a disservice.
Hockey Dad Don has another question. Do you think that if Nolan Arenado struggles more than he did last year, that the manager will bench him for a long period of time? That's a really good question, because the Cardinals are still going to try to move Nolan Arenado right before that trade deadline or at the trade deadline. So do they showcase him? Yeah. Do they let him play as much as possible, even if he struggles?
Yeah, he's playing. If he's on the roster, he's playing. Brooke Grimsley, Randy Karraker, and let's head to the Zoom line. And our buddy Xavier Scruggs joins us. Xavier is all over the place on MLB Network and MLB Network Radio on Sirius. There he is. There's my guy. How you doing?
Hey!
What's going on, you guys? This is awesome. Like, this is actually really cool to be on the video with you guys. I obviously get to hear from you guys on the radio, but it's like something special now getting to do it via video right now.
Nice. It's so great having you on, X. So we always love seeing everything that you're doing on social media right now too. You are busy. Just like following you on Instagram right now. You are everywhere right now.
Oh man, I try to have fun with it. You know, I try to, do what I can to impact not only this game, but also just how we storytell in this game of baseball, how we storytell with sports, even helping athletes out as far as what they want to do with their own brands. I just like having fun with it.
So we'll just start at the beginning with the Cardinals, Xavier. Of course, it's really different seeing their offseason approach of where they're getting ready for this youth movement. They've talked about lowering payroll, and they have done all that. I know that they tried to move Nolan Arenado this offseason, but of course, that was something that they weren't able to do. What do you think of what they're calling this transition time for the Cardinals?
Yeah. I was like, I'm so tired of hearing that word reset. But it's like, it's an opportunity. And I think it's an opportunity ultimately to figure out what is this Cardinals identity moving forward, right? It's a transition not only from a player standpoint, but front office. And I think that there has to be some type of culture created to help this identity of who the Cardinals are going to be, not only this year, but moving forward. And I think it's an opportunity for optimism, right? And players should be excited about it. I know talking to players and learning, that they're going to be able to go out there and play. When you think about the Jordan Walkers of the world, the Nolan Gormans, like the young players, to me, that's an exciting aspect of what the Cardinals can ultimately build. And it's only them that controls their own future. And I like that aspect of it.
Xavier, when you talk about identity, and you grew up, you understand the Cardinal way. So you grew up in baseball, understanding what the identity of the Cardinals was. Is that still an identity that you can succeed with in Major League Baseball? And what would you describe that identity as?
Yeah, to answer that second question first, I think there's just a certain professionalism that comes along with being a Cardinal. There's certain expectations. There's certain understanding of you doing the details, not only on the field, but off the field, in the clubhouse. And making sure that everything that is done is done in a certain manner in which you hold a higher standard towards. And I think that that's definitely still in play. I think that there's just maybe a different style in which we see when we talk about the culture of the Cardinals now. I think you will see hopefully more of the athleticism coming into play with the young players. Hopefully more of this idea that there's going to be growth, and there's not always. And I think there was a period in which we didn't see quite the development over the past few years in which we've seen be a staple for the Cardinals. I think they have to get back to that. And I think that comes along with the transition of President of Operations John Mozeliak going now and seeing Chaim Bloom come in and knowing that that's what he's built with multiple organizations. They have to get back to that. And I think that there's a standard in which that's been lost a little bit when I talk about those details, when I talk about the little things. That's what the Cardinals are built on, and they've got to figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, it's about getting back to those fundamentals. Were you surprised? Because that was something that they addressed during the offseason press conference when they were introducing Chaim Bloom, that he'll be working on really developing the minor league system before taking over as the POBO, which John Mozeliak is currently in that position right now. Were you kind of surprised that they backed off of the youth development? Of course, they didn't completely abandon it, but they pretty much admitted during that offseason press conference that they had to kind of re-emphasize on making sure they're developing these young players at the minor league level.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me, just being in the game every day, how fast things change. I think we're seeing things now from a coaching standpoint, from a technology standpoint, from a data standpoint, in which it's not easy to stay up on everything, including all the trends. And I think that's something that we're seeing them put more priority into now, realizing, wait a minute, we've fallen back, and usually we're ahead of the curve with these types of things. So it didn't come as a surprise, because I know multiple teams that have felt that way. And for the Cardinals, you look at, okay, we're supposed to be, like I mentioned, a certain standard. We're supposed to be ahead of these things. Let's figure out ways in which we can do that again. And it's almost a change in which you have to put more than other people into certain, whether that be certain data analytics, whether that be certain coaches that you bring in, to start emphasizing more of this as a priority. But it's important, and we understand how important it is to build from within. And even teams that can have the higher market teams that are spending money start to understand, wait a minute, we still have to build this thing from within and make sure our resources are right when it comes to the trends of the game.
Kind of touching on that, because I've kind of described it. We know those teams that are the higher market teams that are spending more money than anybody else in the league right now. Obviously, the Dodgers being a great example of that. They're just swimming in different waters than other teams like the Cardinals are currently. Yeah. What do you think is a team out there right now that the Cardinals could emulate, a great model that they could follow with what they're trying to accomplish here?
I mean, I look within their own division, and what the Brewers have done has been absolutely unreal. I think about last year, how they've had 20 something starting pitchers, different starting pitchers throughout the course of the year, still demolished teams and finished first in the Central. And then we saw what they did in the postseason. But I just look at what they've done from a pitching standpoint. That to me is when you can feel comfortable enough to trade away your ace and still win the division, like that lets you know what a development system ultimately looks like from a pitching standpoint. And that to me is going to be the difference, is whether or not they start to develop real starting pitching within the organization. We understand Quinn Matthews is a guy that looks like he has the possibility to be something special coming from Stanford. Same thing with Tink Hence. But until we see it on a consistent basis at the big league level, then it's hard for us to believe as Cardinal supporters. So that is the focus. I look at the Brewers, but I also look at, even before the Mets spent money on what on a Juan Soto and starting to get some starting pitching, I still look at what David Stearns was trying to do when he first came over to the Mets. He said, let's make sure this farm system is being cultivated the right way. Like, let's make sure we're not losing these top prospects the way that we have in the past. So being able to cultivate that farm system is still important to the teams that will spend money, but also the teams that find themselves not spending as much money as those teams.
No doubt about it. And just, I tell this story a lot, Xavier, but when the Cardinals were in the playoffs against the Dodgers in 2014, maybe it was 2013, the new ownership had just taken over, and somebody asked Stan Kasten, their president, hey, how does this look for you a decade down the road? And the interview was a scrum in the Dodgers dugout, and he pointed across the field at the Cardinal dugout, and he said, that's our model right there. And so the Cardinals had it going. Remember, they had brought up Craig, and they had all those developed players within the system, and then traded players, young players that they had developed, so that they could supplement. And that's what, even though the Dodgers have spent a ton on free agency now in the last couple of years, when you look at when they went and got Max Scherzer and Trey Turner, they traded young players. When they needed to go out and trade for a piece, they traded young prospects. And that was it was kind of that model that they were utilizing before they went crazy spending all this money over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I look at Baltimore right now, right? What they've done with their prospect capital and even developing guys that weren't necessarily first round draft picks. I'm looking at international signings, the same thing. And it's almost like they're sitting on prospects ready to use that as value. That's what the Cardinals have done so well in the past. And I think, yes, that's a developmental issue. It could be partially a draft issue. Like, there's so many factors that come along with it. How they evaluate talent at the amateur level. That's a huge part of it. I know when I was in the system, there were so many guys that were lower than 10th round picks, including myself, that made it to the major leagues and were impactful. The same thing with international signings. If you remember, Oscar Taveras was a guy that wasn't really a huge prospect when he first signed, and then all of a sudden the development system was something that was really huge during that time. So to your point, I think it's so important, not just from a big league standpoint, but also from a value standpoint, because now you can start to get more of the pieces that you're looking for, right? Even if it's somebody that you're trying to, you talked about Arenado earlier, like you're trying to give away maybe that contract, or have somebody take that contract. Okay, what can I bring in that stacks the system? What can I do that makes sure my system stays intact? Those are the priorities for me for the Cardinals moving forward.
Hey, Xavier, I want you to give me one young position player on the Cardinals, and it could be a guy that's been here for a year. One young position player. You mentioned Matthews, might be somebody else. So give me a position player that you're really excited about for the Cardinals, and a pitcher that you're excited about.
Yeah, okay, so I know Lars Nootbaar is like slated to kind of be center fielder, right? Like, is it bad that I think the world of Michael Ciani? Like, I literally think that this kid, if he can just hit a little bit, he can be a game-changing center fielder. And with the defense, like, I'm so high on what he's capable of doing at 25 years old. He may not get all the reps early, but I think he's got a great opportunity to be something special. And you mentioned, and if I could just from a prospect standpoint, because I think it's important that, like, the development of JJ Weatherholt is somebody I think can be an impact player, obviously, here pretty soon too. I got the opportunity to host the draft, and not just from a tool standpoint, but also just from a head on his shoulders leadership type of player. That, to me, is what the Cardinals need. That, like, they need a guy in the clubhouse that's going to demand not only like respect, but also some type of leadership that cultivates what this movement looks like moving forward. And I'm excited for him. I mentioned Tink Hence, like, from a pitching standpoint, that's the guy that I'm like, let's go, because he is got some electric stuff. I know he's still young. He's still got some maturing to do, but I think you're talking about an electric arm that can be at the top of a rotation here pretty soon.
You were talking about the Brewers being an example for the Cardinals to look at. You mentioned JJ Weatherholt, an exciting young Cardinals prospect. Should the Cardinals maybe do a Jackson Chirios type contract with him and approach him about that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it may be to where see, like Jackson Churio being an international draft pick, you had the opportunity to see him a little bit more in the system longer and kind of get more of those numbers. I'd be interested to see if they would be comfortable doing that with someone that they drafted, not even a year ago. It could be something down the line for sure. And I think to me, he's one of those players that you can already tell he's going to be big league ready. He's going to be somebody that does it on all sides of the ball. I think that's a good, I hadn't really thought about but that might be a good investment for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Xavier, I want to ask you about some of the things the Cardinals have done in regards to changing things up. They bring in Chaim Bloom, who was obviously part of the Tampa Bay model when they got things going. But he goes out and gets Rob Cerfolio, the Cardinals' new minor league director from the Indians, the Guardians, I'm sorry, where they develop guys. They've done a great job, maybe as good a job as anybody of developing guys in Cleveland. They go out and get a pitching coordinator named Matt Pierpont, who's done a better job of developing young pitchers than Seattle. They go out and get a director of performance from the Dodgers, who's done a better job of getting players to perform at their best level than the Dodgers. Yeah. I really love the method the Cardinals have taken here in terms of bringing people in from organizations that have done what the Cardinals need to do. What do you think? Does that make any difference at all? Do I have a valid point there?
No, I think you do, because I think the more perspectives on the game, the better, right? And the more ideas of what you can bring to the table, and the more thinking minds together, it gives opportunity for growth. And I think that's what we need to see from a development standpoint. But you're mentioning like systems that have done an amazing job. It's not just systems that have, good prospects. These are like systems that have brought guys to the big leagues with serious consistency as far as performance goes. When I think about Seattle and their pitching performance, like look what those guys are doing right now in that rotation, and staying healthy doing it. That's a huge part of it. When we think about development, how are you going about keeping guys healthy? The same thing goes for Cleveland. This is a team that we talked about, mid-market teams that aren't spending a whole lot of money. Like that's what they lean on. That's important. But then also having the perspective of a guy from the Dodgers, you can understand how to use both sides of that. But the development and bringing in different types of guys and the way that the game is changing. I mentioned the trends of the game and just trying to stay ahead of the curve. That's what you have to do now. And I think that it's good to see them put those thoughts in those resources.
Last season was really tough for Jordan Walker, obviously being here, then being sent down, and then being brought up a little bit later on in the season. How can the Cardinals make sure that Jordan Walker is able to be really successful this season?
Oh man, I think that's the huge question, right? Because we know what he's capable of doing, but I think it has a lot to do with allowing him to be himself. As far as kind of just talking to guys and hearing about the tinkering of the swing and all of that, like I think there was an understanding that you wanted Jordan Walker to hit for more power, right? Have more of that power come into play during games. But I think that there was some over mechanical things that were done with him that took away from his actual ability of hitting the ball hard. And that's what he's been known to do. I don't think a lot of it is mental for him. I think a lot of it was some of the mechanical changes that he's felt like he needs to go through as a young player who hasn't even had 2 years in the big leagues yet, if not a full year. So I think there's just this understanding of let him go out and play. And I think that's what we've kind of heard from the Cardinals at this point is that's the expectation. I think there's not going to be a whole lot of tinkering with him. I think you can't take away guys' athletic abilities too. Like this is a strong, big athletic player that is going to a lot of his game is built off of rhythm, timing, not a whole lot of mechanical aspect to it. So just let him go out there and do his thing and see if he can have fun with it. Remember, he also trying to learn an outfield position too. Like came up as a third baseman. So there's a lot of stress on a young player when you're trying to learn a new position, trying to go out there and perform, be the guy, but also hit home runs. Like, let him go do his thing. That's it.
All right, 3 more things. First one of the 3. Most impressive team you've seen in spring training?
Most impressive team I've seen in spring training. I on the American League side, I like where the Blue Jays are at. I think you make some moves to bring in Anthony Santander, 44 home runs. You get better defensively, bringing in Andres Jimenez. You bring a Max Scherzer type of guy into the clubhouse. The bullpen got better, bringing in Jeff Hoffman, one of the best arms from the Phillies. I think it's a team that needed a lot of change. And I think they're going to be much better for it. And there's a mentality that I'm not a huge vibes guy, like, because everybody's vibes are high in spring training, but there was a different type of atmosphere when I stepped into the Blue Jays clubhouse.
Okay, next thing. You're on ESPN, you're on MLB Network, you've got your own podcast, and we appreciate you taking some time on our podcast today, but you've got the Show and Go podcast. Just self-promote a little bit. What's going on with Xavier Scruggs?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I want people to know is Apple Fridays. And this is where people sometimes get upset because their team is not on the local channel. But if your team is on Apple, or even if your team isn't on Apple on Fridays, come check me out. I do the pregame for 2 different games, and I use a lot of my telestration via the iPad, breaking down guys' swings, breaking down the pitchers and what they're doing there, what they do extremely well. It's something that I truly enjoy. And we talked about trends in the game. Guys are using the Apple Dugout app. In the dugout, I'm trying to show the behind the scenes of how a player is actually using that. So that would be my first thing, is come check out me on Apple Fridays on Apple TV Plus.
All right, we will be watching that. And then finally, you walk into that studio when you're home every day. What's your favorite of the jerseys that are behind you right there?
Oh, come on, man. You know the Cardinal one. That's why it's straight in the middle right here. And it's the Oscar Taveras one. Rest in peace, obviously, one of my closest friends coming up in the minor leagues. And it's just a really special jersey to me because obviously it was my debut jersey, 2014. I just, remember being around Yachty and Wayno and Holiday. And these guys really just setting the expectation and setting the standard. And it's not just a baseball thing. It like set the expectations of wanting to be the best for the rest of my life. So this one stays right here in the middle all times.
Love it. And Xavier, I've watched baseball, as you know, for a long time. And one of the things when I evaluate an analyst, I say, did I learn something? And pretty much every time I watch you on TV or hear you on the radio, I learn something that I didn't know before. And I think that's part of what makes you great, in addition to your charisma and you being just such a great guy. But I love your career. I love where you're headed.
No, I appreciate you. And obviously I learn from people like you and enjoy listening to you guys. And I'm not in St. Louis, so I got to get the information from you guys. I got to learn as much as possible and be able to take it to some of these networks. And I'm very grateful to be able to listen to you guys and now watch you as well.
All right, Xavier, thanks. And whenever you need anything, you got the number, just shoot a text and I'll give you any info I got.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Xavier. Take care.
Thank you.
That is the great Xavier Scruggs. You can see him on the Show and Go podcast. You can see him on ESPN, MLB Network, hear him on MLB Network on Sirius XM, and of course on Apple TV, where he's going to provide some great analysis.
He's great. It's wonderful because he actually started out, obviously within the Cardinals organization as a player, and now is transitioning into more of this media role, and he's done a wonderful job. I love the Korea jersey that he had behind him too. If you're wondering what the other one was, he also played in Korea, and he's like a mega celebrity over there. Not that he's not a celebrity over here in the States, but in Korea, he is a mega celebrity over there, and him and his family always go back to Korea all the time.
He's great. So we appreciate him taking some time with us today. Hey, Cards Hub 365 is powered by Gray Bar. It comes up today at 3 here after the Cardinals play the Mets on Sports Hub STL on the YouTube page. You have it live right here on Sports Hub STL all the time after the Cardinals take on the Mets. And you can get the show on demand from YouTube following the live broadcast as well on Apple, Spotify, or any other major podcast outlet. Cards Hub 365, daily Cardinals content right here on Sports Hub STL, powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs.
Now, I think before we get into Grim Report, we kept talking about a little bit earlier about who we have making the team, making the cut. And we put together, this is Randy's Cardinals 2025 projected position players. Explain yourself, Randy.
I will. Okay, here's and I can give you if
explain how dare you?
I can give you my batting order as well. But I've got Nootbaar in left, Scott in center, and Walker in right. My infield is Arenado at third, Wynn, Donovan, and Contreras. I think that's my best defensive infield at the moment. I'm going only because of the lack of offense in spring training. I know I shouldn't be looking at that, but I am. I'm going with Herrera behind the plate, and then Gorman is my DH. And on my bench, I have Fermin, Burleson, Lucan Baker, and Paje. So I do not have Koperniak making the team. I do not have Barrero making the team.
Or Michael Ciani, I think is another.
Or Michael Ciani.
Which we just heard from Xavier there. He believes that actually Michael Ciani, and another important thing to note, he has a great relationship, a very close relationship with manager Ollie Marmol for the Cardinals. I wonder if maybe he has a little inside knowledge there. I don't know with Xavier. He always has all the scoops anyways, but he was pretty high on Michael Ciani. Now, for me, I kind of have the same thing that you have anyways, but I have Pajes being my catcher, just kind of thinking more defensively in that situation. And Herrera, I have him as, one of my bench guys. Yeah, but I could see him being a DH and third. It depends. I feel like Ollie's going to mix and match with a lot of different guys. I have Nolan Gorman as my DH. I have Victor Scott II as my center fielder. So that's where we kind of differ from Xavier, it seems like, with what he's looking at with all these guys and how he's putting them together. I think that Victor Scott II should be your center fielder. Honestly,
I'm with you. As a matter of fact, I have him as my center fielder and leadoff man.
Yeah,
I've got Mason Wynn hitting second. I've got Contreras hitting third, Nootbaar, Arenado, and Gorman, and then Herrera, Donovan, and I've got Walker hitting ninth.
So we have from Stuart Big saying swap Fermin with Barrero, and I agree.
And I have that's your 26th guy on the roster. That is your 13th position player. I don't have much problem with that. If the Cardinals decide, okay, we're so enamored of this guy that we need to keep him on the team, that's fine. I don't think Fermin is ever going to be a difference maker. So if they think that Barrero is, then that'll be fine.
He's a good pinch runner, and he also has some defensive versatility too. I think that's what I was looking at when I'm looking at the bench, because Lucan Baker doesn't have as much versatility in those situations. I think he's going to be more of a guy that's coming off the bench as a pinch hitter, especially against lefties on the mound.
A pinch hitter, occasional DH perhaps.
Every blue moon, a first baseman. Will we see him at first base this
Contreras
season?
And Burleson.
There's no reason.
Right. How much of an opportunity would he get at first base?
Yeah.
So here's your projected position players. And what's your thought process with Pajes as your starter rather than Herrera?
More of the comfortability that we've heard and seen with him and the pitchers. That's where I'm going with it. Either way, I would like to get Herrera in there. I could have him be my DH. So I'm not married to Nolan Gorman being the DH. And same thing with Brendan Donovan. I mean, Brendan Donovan might get a little bit more of some days off this season just because you are a little convoluted. There is a little bit of an issue with the roster construction because of Nolan Arenado currently right now. I just keep hearing over and over again these pitchers being really comfortable with Pedro Pajes. And I think that it might come down to that more than anything. But I do want to get Herrera in for his bat. So Andy says Herrera has to be in there with his bat for sure. And I don't disagree with you. I think it's just going to be different. The difference will be mix and matching on who's on the mound.
And one of the guys, there have been 3 different occasions where Miles Mikolas has led the league in hits allowed. So do you want a guy who threw out 6 of 59 base stealers last year, catching a guy that has allowed more hits than anybody over the last 5 years?
Exactly. And it's like we were talking about yesterday, who will be the odd man out at times. It might be Brendan Donovan if you want Nolan Gorman to get some days rest. We were talking about that earlier in the show. Maybe Gorman gets some days of rest where you could have Herrera be your DH. Obviously, they're going to have him catching this season, but I would almost, don't you think, if I could put money on it right now, that Pajes will be behind the plate in more games by the end of the season than Herrera?
I would think, that you need to ultimately get your pitchers maximized, and Pajes has a much better chance of maximizing your pitchers than does Herrera. This is a text from Ralph Longo who writes on our chat, as someone that lives in the Tampa Bay area now, I hate it. The second a player gets a little bit expensive, they're out the door. That means you have a decent team. You never get to know the players. And unfortunately, I think that's where the Cardinals are headed. I just don't see the Cardinals being a franchise ever that will give out 10-year contracts to other players, free agents, or the $350 million contract. And obviously, if they're taking the Tampa Bay model, which you have to kind of assume they are with Chaim Bloom, who spent 10 years in Tampa becoming the Cardinals POBO, I really do think that the Cardinals management has liked what Tampa Bay has done for years.
Yeah.
And B, I just get the sense that they are going to be that team that when a player does get towards free agency, they'll move them.
Yeah, and we have that coming up in the Grim Report too, about the reports that the Tampa Bay Rays are being approached. Their owner is being approached about basically selling his team because of everything that's going on currently right now. But just kind of closing out, looking at everybody's projected position players, it seems like everybody's kind of in the same camp, other than the bench with Barrero being a big difference there. But it feels like they're just going to move guys around a lot. Andy says Donovan, with his versatility, is great off the bench late in the game.
Yeah, but I also think that his ability to get on base is necessary to have in the lineup.
He led your team last year in OPS, I believe. Did he? Or what was his OBP?
Yeah, I think it's on base. And he's always
But he was also up there in OPS too, I believe.
And his on base needs to rebound. It was down to 342 last year, which isn't terrible by any stretch, but in his rookie year it was 394. Second year, 365 on base. Last year, 342. It'd be nice to get him back to 36, 37% for his on base percentage. And if you have him as your number 2 hitter, regardless of whether I don't like to have the back-to-back lefties, because when you bring in a left-handed reliever, he gets that opportunity. But I wouldn't be bothered if Wynn is your leadoff hitter, having Donovan as your number 2 guy.
It is a little bit weird that the guys that we're kind of looking at that might be kind of squeezed a little bit more when we're talking about Burleson and Donovan were actually kind of the guys who are also leading your statistics, your hitting statistics, and just about every category last season. Yeah. So that could cause a little bit of an issue there.
Yeah. Eric Cleveland, you're exactly right. Donovan is not a bench player. He's an everyday starter. Andy Groh, who's going to be the leadoff guy? I would be shocked, regardless of what happens with the rest of spring training, if Mason Wynn was not the leadoff man on opening day against the Twins on the 27th.
I think so, but I am not opposed to your lineup where you have Victor Scott II being your leadoff guy. Eventually.
He's eventually got to be the guy.
I think so.
He stole 94 bases in a minor league season.
Just to be able to provide that spark, and then you have Mason Wynn right after that. I like that a lot. We have another one from Ghostface Gaming, and he says, Baker's a better hitter than Gorman. Burleson definitely should be playing over Gorman.
Yeah, I just don't understand why. And granted, I've never seen a lot of Luken Baker over the course of a season. I've only seen him with the limited at-bats here. But 2 years ago, Nolan Gorman hit 27 homers and had an 805 OPS. And granted, Gorman has had a couple of years in the minors where he's hit 30 home runs. But I'm not so sure that Baker is a better hitter than Gorman. People that know more than we do seem to think that Gorman is a major league hitter. And right now it appears that Luken Baker is kind of a 4A guy.
Yeah. And I know that he obviously has hit a lot of homers in the minors, but there's clearly a big difference between the two.
This is from Eric Cleveland. Hard to leave Burley out of the lineup against right-handers. Okay, so let's look at this lineup. Okay, so you're going to have Contreras in there. He's playing every day. Donovan is going to play every day. So I wonder if, unless it's Gorman's got to play. So do you against a right-hander, you aren't going to play him every day rather than Jordan Walker. You aren't going to play him rather than Wilson Contreras. I just don't know where the fit is. And again, Brooke, it goes back to the fact that the Cardinals don't have Nolan Arenado moved, because this would be so easy if you had Gorman at third and Burleson as your DH.
It's like we're trying to say that they have roster flexibility with how they can mix and maneuver guys depending on who's on the mound. But at the same time, they can't really exactly do that because they have Nolan. And so it's almost worse having that roster flexibility in this situation where guys could be able to get some at-bats and gain some ground.
And Andy Groh, I could see this actually being the case. And I'll tell you why in a moment. Hoping that when Nato is traded, and let's hope that the Cardinals can move him before his contract becomes so burdensome that nobody else will want to trade for him. I hope when Nato is traded and Gorman moves over to third, that JJ Weatherholt at second plays there. It's going to be fun to watch. I would not be surprised if that happened, because I wonder how, after the Cardinals went to arbitration with Brendan Donovan, I wonder how happy he is and whether or not he's a guy that is going to want to be here for the long term. Or is he going to be like Tommy Edman was? Tommy Edman was thrilled, obviously, to get to the West Coast and play for the Dodgers.
Yeah, we always hear those stories about how arbitration goes, especially with the Cardinals afterwards. It's never a pretty process. And I understand that it's kind of the Cardinals' way when it comes to players, that they don't just pick and choose who they go to arbitration with. They try to do it with everybody so that it seems like they're not targeting any individual player. But then sometimes the messaging that comes away from that can really sour the player's perspective. We talked about it. You've seen Tyler O'Neill was probably the most vocal I've ever seen a player be about how much that really soured his thoughts on the Cardinals organization. And it almost turns things too business-like, where it's like, man, I was doing all this stuff for you guys, but then you took kind of more of a personal attack and a business approach to these negotiations, which it is a business at the end of the day. But for these players, they've been focusing on what their entire lives? Playing baseball, not business. And so when they get into these negotiations and they hear these things where you think that you provide a lot of value on and off the field, but then you kind of hear it being broke down that maybe that's not necessarily the case, I can understand how much that changes a player's perspective on, wow, okay, well, now I'm only going to do this. I mean, look at even Ryan Helsley, for example. He was pretty open about the arbitration process with the Cardinals and how he didn't enjoy it. And look at how he kind of approaches things now. It's worked out for him career-wise, but at the same time, it definitely changes how they view their position within the organization.
One other, and we're this, I'd be fine trading Burley. His hit tool is nice, but doesn't take walks, and his defense is nothing special. Same with his foot speed. Yeah, his foot speed isn't great, but again, I think the Cardinals, why trade him now? Why not find out what he's capable of over the course of a season? From Ellipsis 150, I have a hard time understanding how Herrera is the starting catcher over Pages when Herrera doesn't seem to be able to throw runners out. Other teams know this and steal all over him. That's true. Yeah, they do. Yes, Matthew. He raised his hand.
I know the answer to this one.
Oh, yes, sir.
Avon Herrera, despite it being only 80 games, Avon Herrera hit over 300 last year, and your offense was bad.
Yeah,
that's how you start a catcher who isn't maybe a good defensive catcher. Your offense sucks, and he hit 300 in 300 plate appearances.
They're going to definitely make sure they can get him in.
Who hits 300 in Major League Baseball anyway? If I have a catcher who can do that, that gives me some lineup versatility and put some numbers in my favor. And I can't remember the last time I talked about the Cardinals lineup having numbers in their favor.
He did say that he worked at Driveline this offseason and that he learned things that he never had before, which is fantastic, but concerning at the same time. You know, that's always kind of scary when you hear that from, especially a catcher, that he goes to somewhere that is not necessarily related to the Cardinals in any way. I mean, Driveline has some success stories, also has some scary stories like what we saw with Zach Thompson. And man, I feel terrible for him. But that's pretty interesting that Herrera says that basically that he learned a lot more from Driveline than he had with other experiences with catching. Waterboy says, no surprise, Brooke has Newt starting. No Everybody has Newt starting.
Yeah, we do.
Everybody has Newt starting until he gets injured. Knock on wood, he doesn't. Of course, they're going to put him on there. I could bring up the statistics again about his hard hit rate and everything like that. He's like in the 91st percentile of Major League Baseball players of hard hit rate. He when he is available, I know that we've said this to players in the past. What's the most important? Availability. And when he is available, he is a very effective player.
Okay.
I did, and look, and I was even in the camp of not having him be the center fielder, because remember at the beginning of spring training, there was a lot of people who said, and it seemed like they were going to have him tabbed to be the center fielder. I wasn't big on that. I would rather see him in left field or even right field, but left field, I think that's the best position for him to be in with what this current 100%. Roster is.
Agreed.
I have an idea for a show going forward. We do a show with 3 interviews, and we call it the Beating a Dead Horse Show. And Brooke interviews Lars Nootbaar. I interview João Klaus. And Randy, we just need to find what St. Louis player right now that you have
Sonny Gray.
you have an opinion on that you just can't stop beating the dead horse about.
Oh, Sonny Gray.
Okay, so then
It's
you
easy.
interview Sonny Gray,
Yeah.
and we each do one of our 3 interviews to try to drive home our point about this player that we can't stop harping on.
Or that you mean other people? Or, well, I guess
Well,
we can't start
because other people can't start harping on.
By the
it.
way, let's answer Let's Turn Two's question. If Siani is on neither of your rosters, does he have trade appeal? Maybe. He didn't hit much last year. He only hit 228 and a sub 600 OPS. But if he would have played a few more innings, he would have been a Gold Glover in the outfield. And teams do value defense in center field. I'm not sure that the Cardinals want to trade him. I know the manager likes him a lot.
A lot.
And as you mentioned, and don't dismiss this, Xavier Scruggs has a really good relationship with Ollie Marmol.
He does. And he was saying Michael Siani. So I guarantee you Xavier is hearing some things about what he thinks would be working out best. And I think Michael Siani is a great player. I have nothing against Michael Siani. I just think that Victor Scott II is your future. Why not? If he's already performing, why not go ahead and make sure he gets the job? What my big concern was, and I was telling you about this, is my concern is that if there's one little mistake with Victor Scott II, they might be quicker to pull him and then put in Michael Siani instead of just letting him kind of work through that adversity a little bit.
I think Scott is just a more dynamic player. I think Michael Siani for his career is probably a number 9 hitter, and Victor Scott can be a leadoff hitter that really is dynamic at the top of the lineup. Topher Rocks on the chat. When Chris Duncan was asked about his defense, he said, "I can hit." One of the all-time great Dunk lines. You make drop a couple of fly balls in the World Series, and all of a sudden they think you're a defensive liability, which he did.
Yeah.
That was funny. He was the late, great Chris Duncan. He was great. Let's see. Where was Yachty when Herrera was backup? We need to get Yachty going. So, and we still have our pitching. Oh, yeah, we haven't done our pitching rosters yet, have we? Matthew,
No.
that's a good point. We need to talk pitching. And I hate my pitching, so I can't imagine that you would like it. I look what I don't have there, Brooke. The big thing is what I don't have on my list.
You don't have Michael McGreevy.
I do
there,
not,
and you don't have Quinn Matthews, of course.
Hate
as
myself
an
for
option.
this.
So the thing is it's what we have, right? So I have the exact same starters. I have a different order than you though. So I have Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, then Andre Palante.
Mhm.
You have Miles Michaelis as your number 2 guy, which I know that's just that's like little minute details. It's not a big deal.
Right.
You have Miles Michaelis as your number 2 though?
I just was putting my 5 starters in there.
Yeah.
But
and
yeah, he
then
probably does start the second game of the season though.
I wouldn't be surprised. But Sonny Gray and Miles Michaelis, Steven Matz, Eric Fetty, that doesn't excite me as my starters. And it's what we were talking about earlier in the show with Eric Fetty struggling yesterday. We talked about Sonny Gray's numbers and how they haven't exactly been great during spring training. I understand that this is when the pitchers are working on stuff before the season starts. It does concern me a little bit because I want to see these young pitchers get a chance. I think Mike McGreevy has looked great so far in spring training. Would love to see him make the opening day roster as a starter.
I would too. And this goes to Ghostface Gaming's text that's on the screen right now. If they really care about winning, McGreevy should be in there. Screw the politics. I'll give you some numbers. And maybe this is why I set things up the way I did. Sonny Gray, 25 million. Miles Michaelis, 18 million. Steven Matz, 12 million. Eric Fetty, 7.5 million. Andre Palante, just over 5 million or something like that. But there is something to be said with the Cardinals for players making money and that equating to players getting playing time.
Yeah, that definitely has a big part of it. It's like what you were saying earlier that I think is a great point because I've been trying to figure out why they aren't trying to move an Eric Fetty, a Steven Matz going into the season. Miles Michaelis, we discussed this yesterday. There's no way that a team would want Miles Michaelis. You'd have to take pretty much all that money to be able to get a team to even be enticed to want to take Miles Michaelis. But why not an Eric Fetty? Why not a Steven Matz? Especially with Eric Fetty, that contract is really appealing. I know that the numbers yesterday aren't great. Kind of wish if they were going to move him, they moved him before yesterday's game. But at the same time, why not try to move these guys? And at your point about them having to eat some of the contract, I think is a big part of it.
Yeah, I just don't think they want to. Nick Anderson and Riley O'Brien. Nick Anderson has not really performed well, although they're giving him plenty of opportunities. I believe, let me double check this. I think Nick Anderson leads Cardinal pitchers in appearances so far this spring. Fernandez has 6, and Anderson has 5, so he's second on the team. And then Riley O'Brien is not getting the opportunity that I thought that he would get. And they do, for whatever reason, well, I shouldn't say for whatever reason, they like Kyle Leahy.
You said for whatever reason.
Yeah. So and his numbers have been good, but he just doesn't impress me.
He's just fine.
Riley O'Brien has only pitched in 2 games this spring.
I wonder, because he dealt with injury last season, if that is a big part of
Could be. So Nick Anderson, I know at the beginning of spring training, Katie Wu thought that Nick Anderson would be in that group, and Graceffo has been lit up a couple of times. So it's not like O'Brien and Nick Anderson don't have a chance, because I could see Graceffo being sent back. But they like Roycroft, they like Leahy, they like Fernandez. And then I don't love the idea of having 4 lefties, the 3 lefties is fine. And then Helsley is your closer. So I think you can mix and match Graceffo, Anderson, and Riley O'Brien.
We heard Xavier talk about Tink Hintz, and Tink Hintz is a player that I'm really excited to see one day. I don't know exactly what his timeline looks like, because last year he was rolling, but then he got injured, and it felt like he was scuffling a little bit after injury. So what would you think is a realistic timeline for Tink Hintz?
I think that he needs to give them a whole year of reasonable health, 6 months, and give the Cardinals, if they plan on him being a starter, then I think that he needs to give them 22 starts in the minors to get up here. And he gets going and then he gets hurt.
Don't you think, and you can weigh in on the chat too, if you've seen Tink Hintz and his stuff is nasty. A lot of people will tell you that his stuff is nasty. I feel like he would be best served as a closer, like a Ryan Helsley type.
I know a lot of people in the organization feel that way too, but and he's not a guy that's given a ton of innings. Last year, he made 20 starts and he only threw 79 2/3 innings.
Yeah.
Year before that, 23 starts and he threw 96 innings. So he has not been a guy that has traditionally given the Cardinals in the minor leagues a lot of innings, and that's why people view him perhaps as a closer.
Almost like a Jordan Hicks type with his stuff.
Yeah, there you go. And Hicks is beefed up, but Hintz is a skinny guy. I think he's 6'3", 195.
Yeah, he is skinny.
Yeah, 6'1", 195. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So actually, he's a little bit. If 195 is right, that's a little bit more stout than I thought.
Yeah, he's not Pedro Martinez exactly. Like, it's not that extreme.
I
but
want him to be Pedro Martinez.
Well, I mean, I'm saying Pedro's listed at 5'11", 185, 6'1", 195. While it doesn't seem like a big difference, there's more frame on there, but still, that's ridiculously undersized for a guy that, if you project, can he ever start 33 games multiple years in a row? It's a fair question just because it happens so rarely.
Don't you remember that spring training when Jordan Hicks jumped in size and he looked like a linebacker almost?
Oh, yeah.
It was just like pure muscle. I think his diet had a lot to do with that, because he's a type 1 diabetic, isn't he?
Yes.
And so I think that he had worked with somebody during the off season to address that in his health and his muscle. So we have another question from Ray, or a statement. If Libby is ever going to make it as a starter, I think this is the year to go all in and give him a shot. Ray, I'm with you 100%. Yep. I like what I've seen from Matthew Liberatore this spring training. What concerns me with last year, I felt like sometimes the way they set it up, they didn't give him a complete fair shot as a starter. And I know that you can't coddle young players. I'll wait for that comment to come in where it says, well, you can't coddle these young players. You have to figure out what they have. But for starting pitchers, they are very meticulous and they are very routine. And any little thing that slightly throws it off, I don't think that you're giving them a fair chance, especially in the starting rotation. I mean, it's like they messed with his days off. There wasn't the proper rest time in between. I would like to see Matthew Liberatore get the proper runway, ding, 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 runway, where it's the right timing. They're making sure that's the right amount of rest days where he could succeed and give him a full chance as a starter in the starting rotation.
And they have talked for years about how young he is, and they've given him opportunities, but not significant opportunities. So to your point, he's a guy that they should say, okay, Matthew, you're going to be a starter, and say, okay, 10 starts. You've got, here's what you have. Don't tell him he's got 10, but just say, hey, you're a starter. And then let him go out there and see what happens over the course of 50 days.
Exactly. Mr. Baggins, 88, says, joke of a franchise. DeWitt needs to sell. I agree with Bowden. Giving, you like the pause there that I gave with the look at the camera? Bowden, you agree with Bowden, of all people, giving them an F grade for the off season. It wasn't an exciting off season. I don't doubt that whatsoever, but
if you don't turn in your work What are you going to get? What kind of a grade?
I like what Xavier said. I like what Xavier said, though, about this is a time where the Cardinals are buying back into developing. And if they can especially develop these young starting pitchers, give them a chance, making sure that these players get the most of an opportunity, I don't hate that. We also have really been hard on the Cardinals over the years of their picks in free agency. Well, they didn't do that this year. Instead, they're focusing on developing. They're getting ready for this transition where Chaim Bloom is going to take over. They're making sure they're taking the right steps with Bloom, where he gets to put his kind of stamp on the minor league system and then take over as the Pobo, as opposed to just throwing him in that situation. I was opposed to it at first, but to me it makes sense because then Bloom from the ground up is able to build this into what he wants.
I wonder, and I'd like to get response here when we hear DeWitt needs to sell. This is a fun exercise. Who do you think that he should sell to? DeWitt does not need to sell. If you watch the third on TV, he does interviews like someone who has a gun to his head. Hey, buddy, you own the Cardinals. Smile, would you?
The DeWitts are very
Josh.
serious. Yeah,
now,
they are.
Here's the thing. The people that would be interested in the Cardinals are Bob Castellini, the Reds owner, who has been a part owner of the Cardinals in the past. You would probably have, sad but true, Stan Kroenke has always, not always, but in the past.
Who's he named after, Randy?
He was named after Enos Slaughter and Stan Musial. And he's told people in the past that was the franchise. The Cardinals were the franchise that he most wanted to get his hands on. I don't know if that's changed, but he doesn't own a Major League Baseball franchise. And, oh, by the way, he did bid on the Dodgers when they were sold to Guggenheim. So he's been through the process of being approved by the owners in Major League Baseball. I think that we need to maybe be careful of what we wish for. If the DeWitts sell, do you want a team that's run like the Reds are? Do you want a team where the owner says, I didn't get into this to win trophies? I just don't know that that's what Cardinal fans expect in 2025. It seems to me like they expect championships. And yes, the Cardinals have taken a step back. But if you look at, for example, the last time the Cardinals finished with the worst record in the league, it's like 1908. And the other most recent team that had the worst record in the league was the Braves in 1990. So you have every team in the National League that has finished with the worst record in the league since 1990, except for the Cardinals, who you have to go back to 1908.
To your point, the grass isn't always greener on the other side,
No,
because then
it's
people
not.
could have other intentions, which kind of leads into what Ellipsis 150 is saying here. But I think people know St. Louis is a mega baseball town, and I don't think they would get approval to leave St. Louis. That's the thing is, look at what's going on, not just in baseball, but in other teams in the league. Sometimes you get a different owner in there with different intentions of what they would like. Look at the Mavs. We've talked about that in that whole situation. You have owners that maybe have different intentions that have no ties to St. Louis or really care about St. Louis that much, that might have more nefarious things like what happened with Kroenke.
Yeah, right, exactly. But if you were in it to make money, I mean, the Cardinals have, if I'm not mistaken, in a market that has 2.8 million people, they regularly draw 3.4 million. They had, when TV was really rolling, they had a good TV contract in a mid-market. The Cardinals, relative to the market size, do very well. And there's no guarantee that if an owner, and you're right, that Rob Manfred would never allow the Cardinals to move, and the owners would never allow the Cardinals to move, because they would say, well, hey, this works. This is we've got Tampa, that doesn't work. We had Oakland, that didn't work. Cincinnati doesn't work as well as St. Louis. Pittsburgh doesn't work as well as St. Louis. There's a lot of franchises that, if they're going to move, which I don't think they are, should move before the Cardinals do.
Exactly. And I just think that it would not be smart. But you just, to your whole overall point, I think that you have to be careful what you wish for, because you never know what the intentions of the next owner would be. Even if they stay in St. Louis, what their intentions would be. You could look at the Rays situation, which actually goes into the Grim report here. But first, we want to talk about the Blues Hub watch party, which is coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, and you can join Sports Hub STL, Hot Shots Sports Bar and Grill, and DraftKings for our first Blues Hub watch party. And while you're watching tomorrow night's game on television, log on to sportshubstl.com, where you'll find Andy Strickland, Cam Jansen, Jamal Mayers, and other special guests as they watch the game along with you and take your questions and comments as the Blues play at Pittsburgh. It all happens tomorrow night, starting just before puck drop at 6, a Blues Hub second screen experience where you can hang out virtually with Andy Strickland, Cam Jansen, Jamal Mayers, and other special guests. It's all brought to you by Hot Shot Sports Bar and Grill and by DraftKings.
So this goes into the Graham report where we were just talking about where people were saying in the chat that they want the DeWitts to sell. Maybe that's a possibility. Do you really want, though, the possibility of what's happening with the Tampa Bay Rays? So there is a report right now that the Tampa Bay Rays owner Stu Sternberg is facing growing pressure from Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred and from other owners to sell the team, according to a report from The Athletic. So Sternberg has been under the microscope as the team continues an on-again, off-again deal to build a new stadium in St. Petersburg. If you've been following that, the Rays agreed to build a stadium, but since then, questions have arisen about the Rays' intentions with that. In my opinion, just looking at this and reading the reports on it, it's really long. As we know, they have dealt with a lot of issues, and the Rays are notoriously known for being cheap. I saw somebody, I don't know if you could find it, Rockio, earlier in the chat, talking about being a Rays fan is tough because you like a player, and then they immediately move on from them when they start to be a star. But in my opinion, just looking at what's happening right now here with the Tampa Bay Rays, this is why you need a salary floor in baseball, because you do have owners like this one, for example, Stu Sternberg, for far too long where they're pocketing a lot of tens of millions in revenue sharing dollars from the Yankees, from the Dodgers, from the Mets, even the Cardinals, from all these other teams. And they're doing the bare minimum and now even pushing back on the proper way to do the stadium upgrades or what they need to do to have a proper team at times. I don't disagree with sometimes the Rays model that we're talking about that Chaim Bloom will be working on here for the Cardinals, where you're developing. I have no issue with that. But when you're also not putting a lot into your organization in general and you're pocketing all this revenue sharing money, I think it's a bad look. It doesn't help Major League Baseball whatsoever. Why not have a salary floor?
I think that's a good idea. But you also, if you are going to be a major league owner, you should have the ability, like the Cardinals did, like the Giants did, to build your own stadium. You shouldn't have to have a stadium built on the backs of taxpayers, especially right after a hurricane. There's no reason that this guy shouldn't have been able to build a stadium in Tampa, where most of the people that are going to go to a Rays game live. The demographic in Tampa is much better than crossing the bridge to go to St. Pete, although St. Pete is on the upswing. I don't want to take away from St. Petersburg, but a decade ago, when they were talking about Ybor City, he wanted help from Tampa, and they weren't willing to give him enough. So he bailed on a perfect stadium site right on the water in Ybor City in Tampa. And apparently, the folks at Major League Baseball, Rob Manfred and owners, already have a new owner picked out who could build in Ybor City. I think that makes all the sense in the world. If you've got 29 teams that are participating, and then one that says, no, we're just going to sit back and take your money from both Major League Baseball and government, I think that person should be replaced.
There's other owners, too, who are in this camp. I mean, even John Fisher, what he did with the Athletics, it was criminal what he did with the Athletics. And the fact that Major League Baseball allowed that to happen because they just saw the bright lights and neon signs of Vegas is just shameful. That he basically did not put any money into the organization because that was his intentions the whole time, was to move the team to Las Vegas. Just, of course, fans aren't going to show up. And it was the same. It was so similar to what happened with Kroenke here in St. Louis, where it's like, look, they're not showing up to any of the games.
Right.
Well, what are you doing, John Fisher, to not put any money into this team? Why would people be showing up to games anyways?
And like Kroenke, Fisher was and is the richest owner in baseball. I think Steve Cohen has eclipsed him now, but he's got plenty of money and had plenty of money to be able to build a really representative ballpark. And I don't know if this hurt him or not, but the Giants went to the polls like 5 or 6 times and were turned down for a publicly funded stadium each and every time in the Bay Area. And here is his stadium 8 miles away from what was then Candlestick Park. The Giants built their own on their own dime, and he can't or doesn't want to do that in Oakland. Fisher with the A's.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. And then you've seen those renderings of what it looks like of what they're trying to do in Vegas. And it looks fantastic. It's just not fair to do to fan bases and also to the former players. There's a lot of former players who have come forward just talking about how ridiculous it is. But going back to Sternberg, so the Athletic reached out to him for a statement. He told them, "I'm interested to read about what industry partners have told you about our franchise and its future." Is he just trying to ignore this issue and just hope that it goes away?
Yeah, it kind of feels like that. And this is, by the way, we should also point out that they had essentially a done deal with Tampa, but then the hurricane hit.
Yeah.
And so Tampa has, or not Tampa, St. Pete has other fish to fry in terms of people that don't have homes and businesses that were flattened by the hurricane. But the Rays said, nope, we're going to change anything. We don't want to change anything in this contract. It doesn't appear as if they really want to help the community.
No, it really doesn't. And that's another big part of this, is that it just looks shameful in that way too.
Yeah,
it really does.
And we can say what we want about Ballpark Village. I know a lot of you think the Ballpark Village was not good for downtown. But who else is trying to do things for downtown? When the Cardinals built Ballpark Village, it was the first A-rated, A-class office space built in downtown St. Louis in 30 years. Before that, it had been Met Square, which is old now and isn't Class A anymore. They built the stadium. They built Ballpark Village. They're trying to make downtown a better place. I don't see most of the other people are scurrying out like rats off a ship.
They are, because there is a tax. And I worked in downtown St. Louis. I know that KMOV is no longer in downtown St. Louis, but when they were still there, I was working at KMOV, and there's a 1% tax. And that sounds maybe small to people, but it does matter, especially when you're building a business, when you have people. And it matters to a lot of different people who are working downtown. That tax makes a difference, especially as opposed to working in the county. You needed that progress in the city, and Ballpark Village looks fantastic. It's, I mean, it is like lively on game days there. It's exciting to see, and it's great that DeWitt's did that. Another little point before we close out the Grim Report on this with revenue sharing, and this is why I'm saying that you need a salary floor. So per this report that the Athletic did, the Rays receive $60 million in revenue sharing from Major League Baseball. $60 million.
60 million. And their payroll never reaches 60 million, does it?
No.
So it's interesting, and I'll be interested to see how this all shakes out and if Manfred gets his way and is able to push Sternberg out. Hey, mate, by the way, get your YouTube chat in, because it is Wednesday and we've got a little Ask Uncle Randy coming up.
Oh my gosh. I keep literally, my husband keeps reminding me, because I called him on the way to work today. I called him on the way to work today, and I was like, you got to put the trash out. He's like, Brooke, it's Wednesday, not Thursday. We have trash days on Thursdays. I keep thinking it's Thursday for some reason.
No, it's Wednesday.
Looking ahead.
Yeah. Hey, make sure you've subscribed to our YouTube page. If you're on YouTube, all you need to do is click the subscribe button, and also like this video if you haven't already, and go to sportshubstl.com and sign up for the newsletter. It's sent to your inbox twice a week and anytime St. Louis sports news breaks. You'll be the first to know about Sports Hub STL events and merchandise, get exclusive content and prize opportunities and more. While you're on the site, check out all the St. Louis sports content, including game recaps, programming highlights, sports news and opinion, gambling tips, and more. It's all on the website at sportshubstl.com. All right.
So we want to do a quick Uncle Randy to close out the show. So I have a question for you.
Yes. And by the way, Ask Uncle Randy, if you aren't familiar with it, it allows you a forum to ask a question about anything. Like on these beautiful days, spring springs next week. Spring will have sprung 1 week from tomorrow. Hey, if you're interested in something that's going on in the spring, if maybe you have plans for the spring, if your life is going to change in the spring, I've been around, I've got experiences, and Uncle Randy's here to help you out.
So this actually goes kind of easy into my Ask Uncle Randy question. When you're talking about springtime, it's beautiful outside. It's 70 degrees outside. Uncle Randy, when is it appropriate to ask a neighbor to take down their Christmas lights and decorations?
Okay, I think that,
or maybe let me rephrase this, because I actually would never ask somebody anyways. Let me rephrase this. Should you have your Christmas lights up in March and your Christmas decorations, like a giant inflatable snowman?
Oh no.
God,
no, you should not.
A giant light up inflatable snowman.
That is.
There's a hard line between Christmas decorations and people who leave their lights up year round just so that they don't have to hassle with it every year.
Yeah.
Giant
hard line.
light up
Oh
inflatable
my God.
snowman
yeah.
that you're turning
Does
on
it-
every night.
What?
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we are at we're at
This
March
is-
12th.
What?
Yeah, I think that we have gotten that past the point of that being appropriate. Now, I love the fact that people maybe they're going to keep it up until next Thursday when spring starts. Maybe they're just keeping it up till the end of winter. It's a snowman. Maybe they get joy. Maybe they are thrilled by the fact that they have this snowman. But I would say that once we reach a 70-degree day, that we've reached the point where we should not have an inflatable snowman in the yard anymore.
What if they go this entire month, and then right at the end of the month they put bunny ears on Santa
there
I
you go.
will
or on the
lose it.
snowman? Is that a little
would
bit more?
lose it.
They're
Yeah.
playing the long game. They're just covering Christmas to Easter.
Look, and here's the thing. I'm a part of the Reddit community, and so there's a discussion going on in the St. Louis Reddit page. If you're a Redditor, then you know what I'm talking about. This is a huge topic on Reddit too, and it wasn't me that put it in there, okay? But I did put a comment on there under my anonymous account. And there's a lot of people who are excusers out there for keeping up Christmas decorations. So somebody put in the St. Louis Reddit, my neighbor hasn't put down their Christmas lights, should they? And there's a bunch of people who said, you should mind your business. We still have ours up. We had snow. The snow was not recent. I'm sorry. If you have the physical ability to put up a Christmas decoration, you can take down a Christmas decoration, in my
Yes.
opinion. And I think that the cutoff, honestly, and this is how we did it in my household growing up. It went up, obviously, probably around Thanksgiving. Then they came down after New Year's. Now, I will give you, we did have a big snowstorm that happened not long after New Year's, wasn't it?
Mhm.
And that was
Right.
pretty bad. So I had no problem with that. But then we started creeping into February, and I'm like, you're going to keep that snowman up? Really? And now we're in March and it's still there. It's one house holding it out.
The lawn ornaments that's a bridge too far, in my opinion. That's where you've crossed a line, in my opinion. We can have a lot of discussions about if you like how you set up your Christmas lights, and you like maybe you do like the permanent hooks, and so it's really hassle to like undo it every year and then put them back
But
up.
you still put it
But
up in the first
putting
place.
Putting up the Christmas decorations in the lawn, that's crossing a line. There's no conversation to be had. You're a bad person.
Yeah. So Ellipsis 150 says, how do you feel about those people that keep Christmas trees up all year long, but decorate it for different times of the year, like a Valentine's tree, Easter tree, Halloween tree?
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine. Yeah.
Like the people who
that's
have
fine.
like an actual like tree, like the full ass edifice in their yard, like planted into the ground.
I haven't seen
That's the
that.
best way of doing. There was one person on my block growing up who had like a wintergreen tree, so that the entire year it was just a full on tree in their front
Mhm.
yard. But because of the shape it was, that perfect like cone shape, they would do that every different season. It would get a different decoration. That's fun.
Yeah, there you go.
That's like an office
Okay.
park kind of doing that. We have some other questions here on the chat, Randy.
Let's do it.
Scott Hettenhausen says, do you go to any fish fries?
I went to a fish fry at St. Richard last week. It was terrific.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm going to a fish fry all of the next Fridays up until the end of Lent. And God, I love fish fries.
Fish fries are great.
I'm so excited.
Best fish fry in St. Louis?
Let's
Don't
not
look at me. The
Yeah.
two Catholics in the room.
let's not
could
get
answer
partisan
this one.
here. I mean,
I'm fake Catholic.
me too. I love St. Gabe's because that's where I grew up. But St. Gabe's, when I was a very little kid, got rid of hush puppies and never brought them back. So if you have hush puppies,
Oh.
you immediately go into a special place in my
Oh,
heart.
really? I'm not a hush puppy guy.
I love
I
hush puppies.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. So this is also different for me. We don't have in Middle Tennessee, where I grew up, there's not a lot of Catholics there either. So a lot of this stuff is pretty new. I knew of Catholics. That
Mhm.
sounds weird to say.
I
I
knew they
knew of
existed.
Catholics.
What a
Yeah.
weird way to phrase that.
But
Oh my God.
I really didn't know. I got to go to my first Catholic wedding last
I
year,
heard tell
and
of
it
their
was so exciting because I was like,
man.
I've seen this in the movies. I never knew what it was
I
like.
heard
It
tell
was
of their
long.
idols and
It
loose
was
rules.
long. But I wanted to see the confession room, all the different kind of stuff. That was so cool to me. I love different religions.
Wait, hold on a second. Wait.
You know the little confession thing.
Yeah, flag
What
on the
is that
flag.
called?
It's a confessional.
A confessional. There you go.
Mhm.
Pregnancy brand. We have to like bear
I
with me
thought-
on certain things.
This is
Hmm?
I thought other Christian denominations also had confessionals.
No.
Other Christian denominations don't do confessionals.
No.
No.
I knew they do. I know I know a lot of the stuff they do different. Shout out Martin Luther, but I didn't know they didn't do
Oh,
confessionals.
they don't necessarily do communion either.
I know, yeah, no, that's why I said shout out Martin Luther. The whole
So,
transubstantiation.
The church that I
praise.
went to, Methodist. So Methodist is
don't
what
do
I primarily went
confessionals?
to, but in the South, it's Baptist Church of Christ are like the key.
Baptists don't do confessionals.
Presbyterian
No.
doesn't do confessional.
How do you make a third grader feel guilty?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know.
What?
Here it is. Here it is. If you lie, that'll leave a black mark on your soul.
I mean, they do that one too, but
Oh.
then they put you in a room and make you say what the
Yeah.
lie was.
So
I feel like it's really cathartic.
yeah, so Eric Cleveland says Southern Baptist. No, you see, there's a lot of Southern Baptists. There's no confessionals.
confessionals,
There's
there
I'll be
you go.
honest. I'll be honest when I was this. Baptists scare me. Southern Baptists have always terrified me.
Anyways, going back to what I was saying with the Catholic wedding, that was so exciting for me. Even though it was long, everybody's like, "It's going to be long." I was like, "Yeah, but I've only seen this in movies and stuff. Like, this is so cool." So fish fries are kind of a foreign concept for me, except for in the South, we like fish and we like to fry it. So I agree with what you guys are saying about hush puppies.
Yeah.
I need a hush puppy with my fried fish.
Yeah, there's a lot of good, apparently a lot of really good fish fries in the St. Louis metro.
Well, I mean, there's
Would I be
yeah,
allowed to go?
like every
Oh, yeah,
Catholic.
anybody can go.
Oh, okay.
Almost every Catholic grade school has their own, and you can't throw a stone, and you can pretty much hit a Catholic grade school from every other Catholic grade school
Mhm.
if you have a good arm. So, like,
Go for it.
make a
Let's do
tour of it all.
Okay, so I
water-
I don't have to show like my credentials to be
As a
able
being a
to
Catholic.
Just
go
wear
to
like a,
fish
just wear like
fry.
a, wear like a,
They'll
wear like
take
a
your money.
necklace. Wear like a necklace with your
They'll
cross.
take your money.
They will definitely take your money. That's true.
Yeah. Okay, Waterboy checks in. Is mini golf a sport? Is it a good sport to practice your putting game? I think it is a sport. It's a competition. You need to have some physical ability, hand-eye coordination, or something of the sort. And it is absolutely a good way to practice your putting. So yeah, there's no question that mini golf is indeed a sport. Hush puppies are goated. That's interesting. My dogs love hush puppies because I don't.
They don't? Wait, you don't?
They
like,
do. I don't. I'm not a fan, so I give them to the dogs.
Oh, you just give
And
your dogs
apparently, the reason
hush
they're
puppies?
called hush puppies is to get your dog to shut up because dogs like them.
What?
Hush puppies.
Oh my gosh.
Then why
Reggie.
is the shoe called that? Oh no, don't go. No, never mind. Don't go there. Never mind. Read the question.
No.
Read the question.
Read the
Never
que-
mind. I feel bad.
Pork or beef ribs? I'm pork ribs all the way.
I like both. I'm
I do
not
too, but
opposed.
Yeah, pork ribs just are better than beef ribs.
But
that's
I
all.
need them to be juicy either way. And pork tends to be a little bit juicier.
Hold on a second. You come from the state that at least has a city that talks all dry rub.
That's
So you're not
Memphis.
about that Memphis lifestyle.
Tennessee, there's a reason why
I
there's
know. I
if you look
separated it.
at
I separated it, but I'm just saying.
if you look at the Tennessee state flag, there's 3 stars.
I
And
get
there's
it.
a reason for
I
those 3
know.
stars because the 3 stars don't
Nashville?
associate with
So wait,
each
so what-
other.
Knoxville and Memphis.
So what kind
Exactly.
of barbecue is Nashville messing with?
They just kind of do the
Hot.
standard. I don't think that Nashville's more known for the hot chicken and kind of the hot
Okay.
whatever, the like Prince's and Nashville is what kind of kicked that off. But Nashville's known for more of that. So I mean, I grew up going to all the standard. I've been to Memphis. I've had the dry rub. I'm not a fan of dry rub.
We've got 2 more. Number 1, Let's Turn 2 asks ketchup or tartar sauce for fish. Tartar sauce every day and then twice when you have fish on Sundays.
Cocktail
Tartar
sauce.
sauce.
And Topher rocks. I got pre-approved for my first home loan. Nothing picked out yet. Have some tips, Randy? I do. When you hear the 3 words, location, 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 that's what it's all about. Because here's the thing. You can always make a change to a house. You see like on House Hunters, I don't like this paint. Well, they make paint and they sell it at hardware stores. You can paint that. Oh, I don't like these cabinets. You know that they actually sell cabinets that you can change in your kitchen. Oh, I don't like this floor. I don't like this carpet. Well, you can take that carpet off and put different carpet in. You can even these days, and they do this, they do home renovation things where you can actually take out walls and change the home without having to tear it down and get a new one. So as far as I'm concerned, you look for location, 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 the location that fits you and your significant other best, and find the best location for you and then buy in that area. And then find a house that you like. But if you don't like everything about it, just know that down the road, you can change it.
That is great advice, honestly, because we recently just purchased a house and you're right. It's more about location than anything. You want to be where you want to be, whatever it is, and you can make changes to the house. I know it gets expensive, but you also don't feel like you need to do everything at once is my other piece of advice.
Right.
We made the
and-
mistake of buying a house, then having a baby. And so now we do feel like we have to do everything at
Mhm.
once. Also, don't do that.
I'm slowly realizing that I can't stand living more than like 5 minutes from a highway. Like
That's a big thing.
It's true. It's easier
it is-
access.
As much as I
Yeah.
love our beautiful studios,
Mhm.
it's one of the it's in the area that's like right in between two highways, where neither highway is actually closer, and that there's nothing that like makes me a little like that like makes my brain a little like itchy every day than that little factor, because I'm like, which way should I take? Which way's faster? By the way, can we go back really quickly?
Sure.
We really passed by the they really passed by this ketchup or tartar sauce question
yeah.
for fish, and everyone said tartar sauce. Ellipses 150 said tartar sauce all the way. Very sad about Captain D's being closed.
Captain D's.
Cocktail sauce is a superior is ketchup with an add-on that makes it better for fish. So
Shrimp.
how is cocktail sauce not in the
It's
discussion?
a requirement for shrimp.
Yeah,
It's a requirement for shrimp,
cocktail
but like
sauce for shrimp, but not ketchup or cocktail sauce for cod or something like that.
No.
I'm telling you right now, change your life, Randy.
Mm-mm.
Take a little cod.
Nope.
And instead of ketchup, because here's the thing: if your argument is that ketchup's good on cod, then ketchup with a little bit of horseradish in there, which is what cocktail sauce is.
Yep.
Roll with it, baby.
I have never had at my age ketchup on fish. I've had a lot of tartar sauce on fish because tartar sauce is really, really good.
Tartar
on
sauce
fish.
is good, but
I'm
I'm
going
just saying.
to stick with what got me here.
I
See,
think
this is my
so.
thing. Ellipses says it too. Why is cocktail sauce only for shrimp? It's
just-
ketchup
it
with a little
works well
horseradish. Like
for-
live your life a little bit.
no.
See, here's the thing, though.
God, I want
You
some
can have fish without ketchup or tartar sauce, and it can
True.
still taste good.
Mm-hmm.
Can you really have shrimp without cocktail sauce or something on it and have it taste good?
If it's the Annie Gun shrimp, but then
Well,
they're
that's
doing a
different. It's
lot
barbecue.
to
The
it. Yeah, but
question-
you're just talking like plain shrimp.
right.
I need the cocktail.
Well,
Yeah,
the
I'm
question is, is this breaded shrimp? Is the shrimp breaded overall?
Shrimp
Oh,
cocktail.
no.
Oh, yeah,
peel and
plain.
eat.
Yeah, peel and eat
Peel and
shrimp. You need a little cocktail sauce, because if it's breaded shrimp, I don't need cocktail sauce,
No,
because
you
the
don't.
question is the breading well seasoned?
Yeah.
And that's the big question at all these fish fries. Don't tell me who has the best fish fry. That's very objective. Tell me who has the best seasoned fish, and that's where I'm going to go
who's
buy
got
it.
the best fish fry in St. Louis, brother?
Again, I'm very partial to St. Gabe's,
Does
but
it look like I'm in a hurry?
they don't have
It
hush
does look like
puppies.
you're in a hurry. You have Randy packing up like the.
Yeah, we
school
went
bell
long
just
today. Sorry,
left.
guys.
Yeah, we gotta go.
No, it's I've heard a lot of good ones in the area. So maybe that's a discussion for before we get to next Friday. I'm gone for the next couple of days.
Yeah, enjoy your time off.
Thank you.
Are you going? You're going out of
Just go
town, aren't
play
you?
a little golf. Yep,
Or no? Oh, yeah, you are going out of town, aren't you?
I am.
Nice.
So apparently it's
Enjoy.
supposed to be windy with bad storms on Friday here.
Oh, are you leaving town, or
I
are
am
you
leaving town. Yeah,
Oh, so then you'll miss it, right?
This
Where are
is
you
the-
going?
I am going to the Valley of the Sun.
Oh, nice. So you've already checked the weather there.
It's going to be fine.
Oh,
It's always
you're
fine.
good then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you don't have to worry about anything.
No, I hope not.
Yes.
This was fun. Thanks to Xavier Scruggs. And don't forget, you can always watch this again and again and again on Sports Hub STL. We do have Cards Hub 365 coming up after the Cardinal game at about 3 o'clock this afternoon after the Cardinals play the Mets. And I believe Brendan Schaefer is in with you tomorrow, is he
I
not?
think so. Yes.
Looking forward to that. Great job by our audio video engineer, Matthew Rocchio. Thank you, sir. And we appreciate you commiserating with us and joining us on the YouTube chat. We love having you with us every day, being an interactive part of the program. And for all of us, have a great hump day, St. Louis.